All right. It looks like it's time to begin. Well, good morning and welcome to this week's Long Coffee Break. I'm Matt Bilsma, sales engineer at Long. If you tuned in today solely to see Mr. Andrew Tobin, sorry to let you down. I'm filling in for him while he's shredding the gnar up in Canada. So he owes me a big one. Anyways, today I have with me today Nicholas Lee from Condair. Condair is known as a leader in humidification systems, and they are now getting into the dehumidification market. Nick, welcome and take it away.
Excellent. Thanks, Matt, and welcome everyone. Thanks for joining today. As Matt mentioned, I'm here to talk a little bit about some of our new forays here at Condair into dehumidification. And in particular, a really exciting new product we have on the market with a desiccant type dehumidification product. If you're not familiar with desiccant dehumidification, or also known as absorption dehumidification, I'll go through a bit of an overview of this, and we'll talk a little bit about the product that we've brought to the market here today, as well as some of the really interesting applications where this type of product could be used. Fundamentally, absorption dehumidification is a relatively simple system. What we're doing is we're taking air in from a source, and we're going to be passing the air through a desiccant rotor. And this is a rotor that is treated with a special type of silica gel. The rotor is going to absorb water molecules from the air, and on the downstream side of the rotor, we're going to end up with a dry air supply. Now, as the rotor spins, it will eventually become saturated with water. And so what we want to do is reject some of that water outside of the building. And so on the top portion of the rotor, in this little V-shaped section at the top, we have a regeneration cycle. And so what we're doing is we're drawing air in either from the space or from another source. We're heating it up to a very high temperature, anywhere around 200 to 250 degrees Fahrenheit. And then when we pass that through that V-shaped area on the rotor, we're going to drive the moisture back out of the rotor and then exhaust it from the building. So a relatively simple process. The product that we're offering looks like something like this. It's designed to be a very accessible and easy to work with product. There is a touchscreen display simplifying the aspects of configuration, controlling, and operating the unit, as well as a large front service port to make it easier to fine-tune during commissioning and easier for maintenance staff to work on during the operation and life cycle of the unit. The product is available in a variety of different sizes, about 7 in total. For anyone that's familiar with the range of humidification products that we offer, I wanted to point out that dehumidification, and in particular desiccant products, are sized and selected a little bit differently. Typically, when you're sizing and selecting a humidification product, you'll be looking at the overall capacity or output of that product and then applying that to match your load. With the dehumidification, we go at it from a bit of a different approach. First and foremost, we look at the airflow volume that the unit needs to treat, and that is the primary driving factor in our selection. In our case here, we offer products that range as small as about 300 CFM nominally, right up to about 2400, and available in 2 different voltages within that range, the 208 3-phase and a 480 3-phase voltage. During the selection process, we'll typically check that the baseline unit has the required capacity. And if not, there's some different things we can do to work with that. All of the products have a range of minimum and maximum CFMs with some intentional overlaps within that range. So that'll allow us to go to a bigger or smaller unit as needed. And we can also do some pre-cooling or post-cooling with these products as well to fine-tune the performance to the needed specification. We'll comment that the largest 2 units, the 2400 CFM model and the 2000 CFM model in the 480 volt configuration, are just finalizing their UL certifications right now and will be available from late Q2 of 2022. So we're looking forward to having those imminently available, and that will complete a fully UL certified range of products with us. When we look at what this process looks like on the psychrometric chart, for anyone that's familiar with some of our adiabatic products or adiabatic humidification products, this will look somewhat familiar. With an adiabatic humidifier, we're typically starting at a drier and warm temperature, and we're working up a line of constant enthalpy, so up and to the left, as we increase the humidity and generate some evaporative cooling during that process as well. Desiccant dehumidification is fundamentally the reverse of that process. So we're starting with a warm and damp condition, and as we dehumidify, we're going to draw the moisture out from the air. That's going to release heat back into the air, that latent heat of vaporization, and we're going to follow a line of constant enthalpy. In practice, the dehumidifier also needs to reject that heat. And if you remember, I said we were heating the rotor, or that section of the rotor, up to a high temperature to reject the moisture outside of the building during the regeneration cycle. Some of that heat remains in the rotor as it continues to move, and that's where we get this last bit of sensible heating. So if you look at the total process, we're starting from a warm and damp condition, or a cool and damp position as well, and we're moving to a warmer and drier condition down the process line. Desiccant type products are one of two typical dehumidification technologies available on the market. The other, of course, being the condensation type dryers, or your vapor compression type dehumidification. As a rule of thumb, when we start looking at applications for these products, we often take a look at the psychrometric chart. The absorption desiccant type products are really very useful in the bottom section of the chart, and in particularly very useful with very cool conditions that need to be dried out. Often, if we're looking at very hot and damp conditions, we would look at a condensation type product at the starting range. And then there's a bit of an overlap in the middle where both products are quite suitable. Again, this is just a bit of a rule of thumb to help kind of place your application as one of these two different technologies. Typically, though, we would do proper engineering on both of these to make sure that we could actually apply the product and that it would work well in your application. Speaking of applications, there is a variety of very interesting applications for this type of technology. And I'll go through a few of these in the coming slides. Some of the more common ones include corrosion control, storage, a variety of industrial applications, and even more unique applications. Many of the photos that you'll see on the coming slides here are from our European sales organization. Well, this is a new foray for us in the North American market to get into desiccant dehumidification. We've actually been selling these products successfully in Europe and other parts of the world for a number of years now, and have quite a good experience throughout the organization with these products. One of the more common applications we see is related to corrosion control. And on the chart here, I have a graph that shows the corrosion rate of steel in ounces per square foot of steel per year as a function of relative humidity. And it becomes immediately apparent how important dehumidification can be with these products. And you see that the corrosion rate basically stops below 38% relative humidity. And that has a lot of very important practical applications for steel, whether it's being stored at the mill, long-term storage of the product once it's been produced, or even for finished goods. And some of the common applications we see here are with general equipment storage and military storage, ensuring that these products are maintained at the appropriate conditions so that they're ready at the call of duty. Corrosion control also becomes quite important in a variety of other applications. Power plants and gas turbines are another useful application. And the example I have here, we have a small dehumidification unit hooked up to the inlet for an idle turbine. And what we're trying to do here is keep the air around the turbine dry when it's not in use, and prevent any corrosion or oxidization from forming on the turbines itself to preserve their lifespan for when they're needed. Other interesting applications for corrosion control become museums and archives. We're typically looking at material degradation control here, so paper, boards, and metals. Museums and archives are really interesting applications in that a lot of times these applications involve humidification in some parts, as some materials and some artifacts need to be held in more damp conditions, and dehumidification, as the opposite is true for other types of materials. And a good example here is preventing corrosion on metal, particularly from things that have come up from the bottom of the ocean. Storage is another major area where these products are very useful. And I mentioned earlier that cold storage is a common application for these products, and they really perform well in cold environments. The photo I have here is a cold storage project that one of our Polish teams worked on just before the new year here, actually. And you can see that the customer here is having a significant issue with ice formation and ice damming throughout their facility. And by applying a desiccant dehumidification system, we were able to completely transform this facility. And you can see it's quite really a dramatic difference of how much more usable that is, and how much more easily they'll be able to maintain things like lights and signage and use this facility. So it can be really quite a dramatic difference for icing control. Storage silos are another very common application. Here we have an example of a small dehumidification unit hooked up to a storage silo, in this particular case, storing sugar. What we're trying to do here is dry out the headspace of these silos and prevent moisture from getting in there, contaminating the product, and causing clumping or other issues that will affect the ability to withdraw product and material from the silo. Another good application, breweries. We see this quite commonly on the grain systems and the hop storage. Again, we're trying to prevent clumping and degradation of the product while it's in storage. And you can see here an example of a much larger system for this silo installed here. And there are a variety of other different storage applications, seasonal equipment as an example of this. And our main focus here is controlling condensation, ice formation, and material degradation, just like we saw in some of the previous slides. When we talk about industrial applications, there's quite a variety of interesting ones as well. Pharmaceuticals is a very common one. And the installation we have pictured here is a bit more of a specialized system where they'd added some different heat recovery and some additional modules onto the dehumidifier at the specific needs of the customer. But in this example here, where we're showing pill production or oral solid dosage, there's various portions throughout the process where drying is needed and where humidity control, so humidification, is needed as well. So very specific process requirements for this type of customer. There are many other industrial applications as well. Chemical factories, fertilizer storage, bag filling, all of these type of applications would have need for drier environments to either prevent reactions within the chemicals, or to allow the material to be moved down or filled into bags in different containers. A lot of what we're trying to avoid here is moisture causing clumping and degradation of product as well. The dairy industry also has quite a need for dehumidification. This is an example of two different systems that were installed for cheese production facilities. And the application here is in between production shifts, the production areas are washed down and cleaned, and they need to wait for the area to dry out before the next shift can resume. And by using a dehumidifier, you can really accelerate that process as well. And this extends beyond industrial applications. I heard of an interesting one recently where the firefighters needed something very similar for their equipment rooms. After they come back from a call with wet equipment, they use the dehumidifiers to dry out the equipment, ensure it's at the ready for the next call. And condensation control would be another example of this. So this was an example of a project we did at a hydroelectric power plant where there is a damp environment and they were trying to avoid condensation forming on different pipes. And so they're using the dehumidification system to drive the air below the dew point and avoid any condensation. And there are many, many other applications. This was an interesting one we did in the United Arab Emirates at a falcon breeding facility where the falcons prefer a very specific condition for breeding and optimal conditions for the egg hatching. And the dehumidifier was able to recreate the desert-like conditions that they needed for this facility to be successful. So I hope you found that interesting and informative today. We're really excited to have this product on the market and look forward to being able to support all of the interesting applications that you have in your area as well. And with that, I'd like to thank you and turn it back over to Matt.
All right, thank you, Nick. Yeah, if you could just go to the last slide there. So we appreciate your time today. And if anyone has any questions about or can use assistance with selecting a Condair dehumidifier, please contact your sales engineer. I think we saw today that even in a dry climate, there's a number of industrial and different processes that can really benefit from humidification, dehumidification control. Thanks again for joining us today. Please join us next week when Sean Davenport-Smith presents on PVI's new Centurion water heater. Thank you all and have a great day.